All right, hey guys, welcome back to Samco Tradbo. Jason here, sitting here. It's starting to rain. We got a hurricane coming tomorrow. Tomorrow night coming in, Helene or whatever one it is, it's going to come up through and going to dump a lot of rain, but nice, peaceful out here, and it's actually kind of temperatures have cooled down a little bit. So anyway, what we're going to talk about though tonight, topic-wise, one is very controversial. And my attitude's kind of changed over it as I learn more about it. Now, I still don't do it, but it's interesting. And that's going to be bait hunting for deer. And we see this more and more now. And it's, when I lived in Michigan and up there, even in northern Michigan, where it was all big woods, I was very anti-baiting for myself for a period. Let's actually go back in time. Let's look at it this way. Okay, 30 years ago when I started bow hunting, I thought the only way you could hunt and kill deer was with bait because that's what everybody did. So I tried it for a little while and realized that I was jumping deer off of bait every time I walked in the morning. Then I'd never see anything, so mornings were out. So then I transitioned from hunting bait only at night and not hunting bait in the morning. And the first deer I killed, I didn't kill on bait. I killed it just naturally on the ground by sitting on an intersection. You heard the story about that doe, that suicidal one. It let me, with my compound, stand up, turn around, and do that, and that wasn't with bait. And so I thought, okay, I don't need to use bait, and I'm bumping deer in the mornings. I'm seeing deer at night, but I had shot over the back of like a bunch of them, even in that first year, shot over the back of a ton of deer on bait, and because they were so wired. And so finally, by my second or third year bow hunting, before I even killed my next deer, before I even killed my first traditional deer, I'd stopped baiting altogether, just gave up on it. And then I had done a little bit occasionally after that. Every once in a while, I would still do it sporadically, like maybe 2 or 3 sits a year just to put some meat in the freezer. And I did that for about for about 3 or 4 years. After that, 3 or 4 years into it, so 27, 28 years ago, I stopped baiting altogether. And I was like, it doesn't benefit me. There's more to hunting and learning more by not doing it than there was doing it. So I stopped doing it altogether. However, for my wife, for my kids, both of my kids, actually, no, not once. Tina has killed 1 deer over bait. None of my kids killed deer over bait. They've killed 2 deer each, and neither one of them killed them over bait. They killed them in natural settings. But I would have bait put out, like when John would come up at times, I'd have a couple spots baited for him. We wouldn't, at that time, we knew better, so we weren't actually sitting on bait. We were sitting 80 yards downwind of bait trying to catch them as they were circling in to come into there. We tried all these things like that back in the day, way back in the day. But point being that then I went into a period where it's like, you don't need to bait. Baiting's bad. Don't bait. You shouldn't have to bait. There's no reason to bait. Do it naturally. This kind of stuff. And then I got to a point where I realized that, as I matured more, I thought about the people that own private property. Okay, they own private property and they need to be able to bait to keep deer on the property. Otherwise, the deer are going to other people's property or into the croplands or things like that. Or maybe they got a specific area that's bedding there, but the deer are on the other property. They want them on theirs. They're going to try and bait them. Then it becomes a baiting war between 2 properties. Who can bait the most, get the most deer in? We saw this thing. Then Michigan banned baiting. And when they banned baiting, oh my God, my success rate went through the roof because I didn't have to deal with corn and carrot piles and apple piles every 50 yards in the woods, and deer went back to natural habitat, natural food patterns, and it was amazing for me. So in Michigan, I was huge anti-baiting. Just didn't like it for myself. I never had a problem with people doing it. I didn't want to do it, and I didn't like it and didn't do anything with it. I still don't want to do it, and I still don't do anything with it. But as I get older and more mature, I guess you could say, in this, and I experience more places, I learn that there's a lot of times that baiting does make sense. Number one, for example, there's a lot of people down here in the south. This terrain down here is brutal hard sometimes compared to the rest of the world. This is brutal hard. Now, many parts of Georgia is a massive state. And I don't want to say that Georgia's hard because it's not. I'm saying that southeast Georgia and in the swamps is a whole different world. And even on the private properties around here, it can be very tough. Baiting is huge here. Okay, baiting is very huge. Typical southern rednecks, and I mean that in a good way, not a bad way, because I love them. But they put out corn, set up a shoot box or a shoot house, and or set up a stand there, and that's how they do it. And I don't have a problem with it. They're putting meat in the freezer and that kind of thing. It's not how I'm going to do it, not how I want to do it. I don't learn anything from doing that. And for me, chasing the learning experience has way more power than chasing the deer. Now, that said, there's also people that I know personally that some of the best hunters I've ever met, but there's times on their private properties they get to hunt, they'll run bait. Not because they need to run bait to kill the animals, but they're running bait because they need to move the deer on small tracks, especially like in urban areas and things like that. They need to get the deer as far as they can from houses onto that property so that there's less chance of a deer, shooting a deer and it running up onto somebody's back porch and falling into their swimming pool and dying, that kind of thing. So they use bait to get the deer further as far as they can to give them that bigger buffer. Stuff like that totally makes sense, 100% for it. Anything you can do to keep a deer from running into somebody else's yard, especially when their kids are bouncing on a trampoline, more power to you. That's a fantastic thing. People that just want to fill the freezer, even though they want to hunt other places, do that stuff, whatever case is, but they want to go out there and knock some deer down and fill a freezer, more power to them. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with any of it at all. Never really did, except where when it affected me personally, which was in the woods, in the public lands where I hunted. It was really tough to scout and learn all this stuff that deer do naturally. And then 2 weeks before the hunting season, everybody comes up and mucks it all up and screws it all up because there's corn and carrots every 100 yards away. And it was annoying as can be. And I hated it. And like I said, it turned all the deer into nocturnal movements. They could eat at a smorgasbord buffet of everything they wanted all night long, every 100 yards down every single road, 50 yards into the wood. You could walk 50 yards in and parallel a road and cover bait piles every 150 yards. It was unbelievable. It's the way it was. Down here in Georgia, you can't bait on public land. You can bait on private land, but you can't do it on public. I love that. That's perfect because you know what? It gives us that have to fight for spots and that kind of stuff and fight for the game and fight with the competition. We get the freedom of natural movement patterns. Whereas the people that have their own private land, they can do whatever they want to. You want to put corn on it and pull deer into it, more power to you. One of the WMAs I hunt, I spent a lot of time last year hunting there in what looked like perfect places, not seeing any deer at all, only to find out from a local that it backs up to a hunting club, and that hunting club right there on that property line, literally 250 yards from where I'm hunting at, or from those places I was hunting at, runs corn feeders nonstop and has people going in there and hunting all the time. But they are basically holding every deer there, and all this massive bedding area, they set it up for it. I stopped hunting over there. Why? Because I knew it was no good. Once I learned that, it's like, I can't believe I spent 10 times sitting in a stand over here hoping it was going to be good because of what I'm finding, but they're all stuck on that corn feeder over there. So what they want to do on public land is fine, or on private land is fine. I'm glad they don't get to do it on public. Texas is a big place like that too. Texas has a lot of monotone terrain and a lot of things that the only way to get the deer is you got to draw them out, and you got to use corn to do it, that kind of thing. So everything varies. Now you get people like here, people are like, well, I can't believe you bait for bear up north. We down here in Georgia, we don't have to bait for bear. You're down here in Georgia, where you can go out there and you can literally hunt in the, in the hills down here in North Georgia, up in the mountains, and you can get into those white oaks, and you can really concentrate on what these bears are going to do, almost like deer, and you can hunt them there successfully and do a great job. You think you're going to go into Ontario and you think you're going to just randomly go walk down a spot where bears are going to be and set up? Without bait, you don't have a chance. Without bait or dogs, you're never going to even see a bear, find a bear. Your odds are they're literally like 0.00001% of getting on a bear without bait up there. So you see that everything varies. It's based on where you're at, what you're doing, how your thing is. So I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it's a good thing under the right circumstances. I do not think that baiting should ever be allowed anywhere on public land. My opinion, I don't think it should be there. The public land is for everybody to enjoy. And when you get to bait, then you take away that opportunity and that enjoyment from other people, and you change the movement patterns and the patterns of deer. And I don't like that under any circumstances. I don't think it's good. But on private land, like I said, you should be able to do whatever you want to. You want to bait, you can bait them. And like I said, I see a lot of times where baiting them on private land, especially in urban areas, is pretty much one of the smartest things you can do because you can actually get those deer into areas where they're not going to run into houses, okay, or they're not going to run off of the property, or they're not going to get into some. I mean, what if you own, say you got 150 acres of land and you're all excited about it, but this neighbor on this side over here is where the funnels are and where all the bedding is, and they're going to be using that, and that's where you want to hunt at. But that neighbor will not, under any circumstances, let you go on his property to recover deer. He's told you before, cannot do it. Do not ever come on my property. in that situation, in order to hunt your property and get deer to put in the freezer, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to draw those deer to the other side of your property to get them away from there so that you don't have to worry about that. Baiting is a fantastic tactic to do that. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a good thing under a lot of circumstances. My one big thing about it is if you're going to do it, own it. Okay, I see people on the YouTube stuff and things like that that actually hide it. Okay, they either hide it, like you can see there's corn there, but they're trying really hard to not show you that there's corn there, but you know there is. You just know it by the areas. You can just tell when you've been doing this long enough and hunting long enough. You know when you know that big dark dirt circle in the middle of there with no oak trees or anything around it doesn't naturally exist. It exists because you put corn out there every single day, and even though you can't see it, or you went out there and scuffed it around, or you're using that dark colored dirt looking attractant or whatever, we know that there's stuff there. Okay, we know that you got stuff there. Don't hide it. Don't act like it isn't. Don't put it behind a log so that 10 deer come up and they're eating like a trough behind a log, but you can't see that strip of corn that you put there. Don't play those games. If you're going to do it, own it. Okay, just straight up own it. We don't have a problem with it. You can do whatever you want to do legally on private land, and we don't fault you for it. Like I said, there's a lot of times that even some of the best hunters in the world, if they're on private land, it is smart to run bait. And it makes perfect sense, and a lot of them do. So more power to you with whatever you want, however you feel. Like I said, me being a public land hunter, I don't do it. I don't have to do it. If I was a private land hunter, and I had to get in, so I got access to private lands, and it would have been more beneficial for whatever the variation of reasons is to actually bait that property. I myself would hunt bait. I would have no problem doing it whatsoever. Wouldn't even blink an eye on it. But I also understand that when I'm doing that, I'm not truly hunting the way that I like to hunt. That would be me going out there and doing property management, even with bait, but it is property management to harvest an animal. That's not where my world is. My world is in terrain navigation and terrain feature understanding to get into the right spots to naturally harvest animals. Okay, that's where my world is and where my fun is. But don't think for a second that baiting is bad. And don't think for a second that somebody's doing it is breaking rules or they do it because that's the only way they can kill a deer, anything like that, because I don't think that's the case. Like I said, being down here in Georgia and knowing people that are doing these kind of things and seeing people that will run bait in certain situations, yet on the same note, they'll turn around and they'll be some of the best dang public land hunters you'll ever meet in your life at the same time. You know, it's like the bow hunter that becomes the gun hunter. Okay, there's nothing wrong with either one of them. And I know more people that are traditional bow hunters that gun hunt than I do that are compound people that gun hunt. Because we know there's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes you want to fill a freezer and you want to just get it done and you want to make it happen, or you want to, take advantage of this property, whatever the case is. So in my opinion, baiting is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're going to do it, own it and explain it. Don't try to hide it. Don't try and pee down our back and tell us it's raining. We know better. But own it. And nobody's going to give you a hard time for it. My thoughts on it, I'd like to know your thoughts. Put them down in the comments. What do you think? How do you feel? Where do you stand on the issue? Me personally, private land, do whatever you want to. Public land, keep that crap out of there. That's my attitude. Private land, completely fine. But on public, where we all have to work together and try and, not work together, but hunt the same properties in the same situations, nobody should have an upper hand like that and be able to move deer and then also make deer nocturnal. No baiting should be allowed on public land as far as I'm concerned, anywhere, anyway. Same with trail cameras. Whole nother topic sometime, but I don't think a trail camera should be allowed on public land under any circumstances. Not at all. I'm so anti-trail camera, and I'm so sick and tired of walking into trail cameras. Me and Robert were just out hunting yesterday. As a matter of fact, we were out there and we were scouting together midday, and he's like, this spot here over here has got a pretty good persimmon, but there's always a camera on it. We go over there, no camera on it, and then we go to another spot. He's like, well, this one here is a real good. Oh, look it, we got a camera right there. We go to another spot. He's like, look it over here. This is probably a good draw. Look at how this comes in. We come around the corner. Oh, camera right there. He's like, hey, camera. So tired of cameras. So get your cameras out of the woods. That's a whole nother topic, but I cannot tolerate or stand the cameras anymore. But baiting-wise, should not be legal on public land, private land, do whatever you want. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.